teacher has its own perks. So a couple of days ago, I was interacting with one of my 9th grade students and I asked him, how are your academics coming along? He said, sir, excellent, excellent. I said, wonderful. What do you learn? And he goes like, ऊपर है mountain, नीचे है valley, बीच में है plain, बीच में है plain. This is what a 9th grader comes up and tells me that he's learning as part of his curriculum. Brings me to a very, very important question. What is education? Is education about cramming textbooks? Is it about retaining? In the olden times, about a couple of centuries earlier, information was difficult to obtain. You didn't really have all those many sources, and even the sources that we had, the access was limited to a chosen scholarly few. Obviously, it's bound to happen that the entire emphasis in the learning and teaching process will rest on the concept of learning, information, and knowing. Because without it, you can't really move forward. But today, the education scenario has undergone a paradigm change. Today, information is available to us on our fingertips. Our pockets have internet explorers with which we can browse the internet. And still what appalls me is, our education system, the one that we tom-tom so much about, places the very same emphasis on rote learning that it did in the 20th century, and we call ourselves 21st century people. Ironic, isn't it? For heaven's sake, education is not the same as information. Education is not about mugging up. Education is not about living with dogma. In fact, education is about embracing change. Education is about taking risks. I have a question for some of you, or maybe all of you. Please, one of you, try and answer the question. Tell me, in which state does the river Kaveri flow? All of us have done geography, right? In which state does the river Kaveri flow? Karnataka. Ladies and gentlemen, a small little kid who was asked this in the exam wrote in the liquid state. The river Kaveri does flow in the liquid state. Obviously it does. And what did he get in return? He got a big fat 0 on the exam. This is not education. Education is not about de-incentivizing creativity. It is about incentivizing creativity. It is about exploring the unbounded panorama. I'm sure all of us agree that when we talk of education, education is much more than just about information. Education has to deal with several aspects to it. The first important aspect, it should allow you to explore your potential. The second aspect, obviously, it should enhance your creativity. It should allow you to embrace change, ladies and gentlemen. This is what the education process inherently symbolizes. I'm sure, all of us, we can't really confer a PhD on Mr. Google, even though Mr. Google has more information than any one of us singularly does have. Because education is not just about having information in yourself. It is about the ability to be able to process this information. And as per me, I've broken down education into 3 very simple subsets. The first set is about knowing. Of course you need to know. No one challenges it. Information is absolutely important. But more important, or probably if not more, at least equally important, is the ability to comprehend, to be able to think on what you learn, and then the ability to apply. Let me ask you one more question. Being a teacher, I have this penchant for too many questions. So here goes one more. Can anyone tell me, why is a pizza box not round? Please.
If you remove the slices if it's round.
Absolutely correct. So amongst an audience of so many, I just had one young gentleman here telling me why a pizza box is not round. We all are educated, right? We all have possibly done our 10th, or at least some of us who are youngsters here are well on our way to passing our 10th at some point or the other. And still only one young gentleman here comes up and tells me it's because it's difficult to remove slices. This is exactly what I mean when I say education is not just about knowing. We all know that pizza boxes are not round, but only some of us realize why it isn't round. We have been able to synthesize the gist of the education process into first knowing, then thinking about it, and then applying it to solve real-world problems. A lot of people ask me how IIT Bombay is very different. I've studied from IIT Bombay. I've done my bachelor's and master's. How IIT Bombay is very different from all the other, or rather most of the other engineering colleges in the country. And the answer that I give them is simple. I tell them, look, at IIT Bombay, what I realized, and what they made me realize more importantly, was that it's not all about information. You don't go into an exam hall cramming the answers. You go into an exam hall believing that you can think of the answer, that you can apply whatever you know to finding the answer. It taught me the ideation process. It allowed me to dream. It helped me realize that if I can dream, if I can think, and if I can apply what I've thought about to practical world scenarios, then I definitely can make a macro scale impact. Unfortunately, if you look at the current education scenario in the country, we are not an education system. Rather, we are an examination system. Just today, before this very event, there was the JEE exam happening. If any one of you have had the good fortune of having a younger sibling or a spouse or a son or daughter or any elder giving the JEE examination, and you ask him how the JEE paper was, he'll tell you, too much of mugging up. Just too much of information, man. Not worth it. I wasted 2 years of my life trying to cram up and cram some more up, and then I've scored pathetically, and I'm not getting into the IITs. What did I do with my 2 years? What we need is exactly the opposite. We need to tell our kids at the 11th and 12th grade level, hey, you are investing 2 years in your future. You are investing 2 years in trying to make yourself a better person by learning something more. Instead, all that we'll end up doing is focusing on information. There was a recent study that was conducted by the FICCI, that's the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. So this organization basically proposed a report, made a report, which was on India's relevance in the global scenario as far as higher education is concerned. And what it found was something that I know all of you expect. We've grown. We've definitely grown in terms of capacity creation, in terms of enrolling number of students in schools. But where we lag even today is in terms of quality. Where we lag is in terms of curriculum. Our curriculum, many say, is not at par with international standards. Where we lag is the pathetic student-to-teacher ratio. Too many students, too few teachers. Where we lag is not just the student-to-teacher ratio. It is in the quality of teachers that we have, because our breed of teachers at some point in time, due to force of habit, unfortunately, have also been part of an education system that only taught them cram your way through your B.Ed. Maybe. It's not an accusation. I hope it's not reality. But apparently, fact seems different. Talking about teachers, a lot of students I meet, they are very apprehensive in asking doubts. I asked one of them, what happened? Why don't you ask doubts? The kid says, sir, I asked this teacher a doubt. He said, hey, you know what? Don't ask stupid questions. You're asking too many silly questions, my boy, I won't answer you. Or this is out of syllabus. Not in syllabus, I don't know. Go and next year ask some other teacher. I said, wonderful. And then I narrated to him an experience, which I'll narrate to you as well. Last year, I was teaching a student nuclear chemistry, for all that's worth. While I was teaching him the intricacies of chemistry, unfortunately, I'm a chemistry professor, so he came up, one student in the class, and only this one student, not brilliant, pretty average, comes up to me, raises his hand and says, sir, I said, yes. He says, you're teaching us about radioactivity, right? You know there was a nuclear bomb dropped on Japan? I said, of course I do, everybody does. He said, what happened to the bodies of those that died in the nuclear bomb attack? The entire class burst out laughing. What sort of a stupid question is this? He's asking what happened to the bodies of those who died when sir is actually teaching chemical reactions. I didn't laugh. I couldn't laugh. Frankly, I didn't know the answer. I went home, I sat on Google, and trust me, I did no less than 4 hours of Googling. And probably the only amount of knowledge that I gleaned was that some of these guys who died who were rich enough got burials in lead-lined coffins. What about the others? I still don't know. No query is silly. No doubt is stupid. Unfortunately, ingrained in our very DNA for the knowledge scenario is this fact that we will stick to syllabus. This is exactly why I've started Thinkers to Rankers. At Thinkers to Rankers, our motto is very simple. We want to address this very gap that exists in the education scenario, as was introduced. Yes, we teach students online across geographies, with the sole motto being that of my team. We do not want a student to cram. We focus on a student being able to understand and appreciate math and science rather than just mindlessly cramming it. We want a student to learn from the very basics. We don't want a student to be overly reliant on formulae. We want a student afterwards to go out there and be able to correlate what he or she does in the classroom with what exactly the real world throws at him or her. This was the thought process. And I think in the education process, what we need is a concerted effort in this very direction because, and I don't need to say this to all of you because you probably know it, education is an unbounded panorama. The opportunities that exist are manifold and tremendous. Each child can be taught to become the future leader of tomorrow. Unfortunately, what we're obsessed with is to tackle this problem starting a few IITs and starting a few new schools and changing the curriculum. Sure, they'll help. But what we need to realize is we need to go beyond this. We need to tackle the mentality. I'm not here to tell you that education should be given to all. Yes, it definitely should. I'm here to tell you that the right education should be given to all, rather than focusing on what we have been doing all this while and creating, as I like to call them, rattu-tattus. We need something different. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm amazed, ashamed, and humbled at the same time because of one small fact that sort of occurs to me, which I don't know may have occurred to all of you as well. I'm from IIT Bombay. Every year, more than 10,000 graduates and postgraduates pass out of these reputed engineering colleges. And yet, the contribution that should be there from them, I don't really see that everywhere. The only reason, perhaps, is that we are busy servicing the world's manpower requirements. We are only cheap labor to the rest of the world. We need education that tells our youngsters, hey, don't worry, ask us doubts. Because if you ask us doubts, if you think, you will be able to grow. What if they don't do this? If they don't do this, tomorrow they will turn out exactly the way some of us have turned out. They will be resistant to change. They will be people who will sit there and say, don't you dare think out of the box. This is in the textbook, write this in the exam. One word outside it, you lose half mark, period. These are the kids who are the future of your country, who are the future of our country, who are the future of our world. They are the future teachers. They are the future corporate head honkos. They are the future TED speakers. They don't deserve this. We need education. That kind of education that teaches them to grow as individuals. We need education that will enable them to have self-confidence, that will enable them to think for themselves. We need education that doesn't just create us to be back office staff. And this is not just about syllabus. Yes, syllabus is an issue. But as I said earlier, it's a question of mindset. As long as we stick to the notion that education, information, same thing, doesn't really make a difference, nothing's going to change. because we're going to promote the very same policies that possibly we don't like. I was interacting with one of the students just before the conference, and he was telling me how, instead of, he's passing out this year from engineering, and he was telling me how he doesn't want to do engineering, how he wants to be a journalist. Education should be an empowerment tool. Education should help you make this choice. Education should tell you, yes, go ahead and do it. Don't be scared. If at every stage you're scared, I don't know it, will I be able to do it? You won't take the first step. Sometimes it's just a leap of faith. When I started teaching, when I got into the entire process of teaching and learning, a lot of people said, you're an IITian. Not expected. We are disappointed. You're supposed to be one of the brilliant minds of this country, and you're wasting your time teaching. Anybody can do that job. I said, not anyone can do that job. A lot of the teachers, and I don't know how true it is in your lives, but in my lives, I've seen a lot of teachers who come up and just tell the student, इतना है, इसको याद कर, exam में pass हो जाएगा. We don't need that. We need something more. I've realized something, ladies and gentlemen. Education, it's not really a destination. You can't say, I'm educated. I have a B.Tech and an M.Tech from IIT Bombay. See, I'm on the top of the world. No, doesn't work that way. Education is a journey, and it is a journey for life. This reminds me of a short joke that I read somewhere. The joke went thus. A teacher was teaching a kid about, the entire class rather, about signs in class, about how traffic signs should be followed. The next day, one small kid turns up late, and the teacher says, Billy, why are you late? The kid says, ma'am, yesterday you taught us about signs. Outside the school, there was a sign that said, school ahead, go slow. We don't want kids to be like this. Yes, they need to know, definitely. But we need to teach them to go beyond that. We need to teach them that there is a life beyond the textbook. We need to teach them that there is so much more to do. Every single day, I spend a lot of my time reading up stuff. I know chemistry. If I've been teaching students for the JEE Advanced, I know chemistry. I know it. But every single day, I still take the effort of going on the internet, picking up books, and enhancing my knowledge. Because only if I demonstrate it to the future generations, only if I show them that, yes, your teacher is working hard to give you an education beyond information, to expose you to a lot more than just your textbook, it's only then that they will pick it up. Every single class, when I teach them, I make it a point to get them to ask me questions. I incentivize it. I tell them, you know what, I'll give you 5 minutes extra in the exam if you ask me good questions. I incentivize it because I realize one thing. If we don't break the vicious cycle now, and I think it's high time we do, our future generations, and I fear for this day, will turn out to be just another person servicing just another company. Ladies and gentlemen, education is not equal to information. I've realized this fact. I hope you too have. Thank you.